Are you thinking about starting your own podcast? Don't know where to start? Well, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to start a podcast. Let me tell you about it. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. And best of all, it's free. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Just download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hello, Candid Mamas, and welcome. You're listening to the Candid Motherhood podcast with Roxy
and Jackie,
where we tell you all about the ins and outs of motherhood.
We share our own life experiences to prepare you for the good, the bad, and the ugly that comes along with parenting.
So grab your coffee,
sit down,
get comfy,
and enjoy today's episode.
Hi, Candid Mamas. Welcome to another episode of Tell All Tuesday. This month, we're going to try something new. We're going to be doing a mini-series, and this is our first mini-series entitled Empowerment. So all of our posts on Tell All Tuesday are all going to be about empowering us as women, as mothers, and just as humans in general. So today, we're going to be talking all about forgiveness, because when you forgive, it is like a healing process, which in turn empowers you. So we're going to talk all about that today. So the definition of forgiveness in the dictionary is the action or process of forgiving or being forgiven. But when you look at it in a psychological sense, it means forgiveness is a conscious, deliberate decision to release feelings of resentment, of vengeance toward a person or group who has harmed you, regardless of whether they actually deserve your forgiveness or not. I am a Christian and I read the Bible a lot, and forgiveness is found in a lot of verses in the Bible. And whether, whatever religion you are, I think that it's still good to know because I think it still pertains to this. So to forgive as Jesus intended the word to be, it's willing to throw away our resentments at being wronged. Okay. So whenever somebody wrongs you, forgiving somebody is basically saying like you're throwing away their wrong and now you're basically starting a clean slate. So when you forgive someone, though, you're not minimizing, downplaying, or denying the seriousness of the offense that was put against you. And it doesn't mean that you're forgetting, condoning, or excusing the offense. It doesn't obligate you to reconcile with the person who harmed you or release them from any legal accountability at all. Although sometimes forgiving somebody does cause reconciliation. Depending on your situation. But forgiveness, what it does is it brings the forgiver peace of mind and frees him or her from her destructive anger and resentment. It empowers you to recognize the pain you suffered without letting that pain define you. And it enables you to heal and move on with your life. An act of forgiveness does not require an apology from the other person. Forgiving someone is not for the offender, it's for you. So I want to ask you, Jackie, are there any instances in your life where you've needed to forgive someone in order to move on with your life?
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, forgiving somebody may not be for them. It may just be for yourself. Like they always say, I'll forgive you, but I won't ever forget, One instance that I can think of is I had a lot of hate and resentment towards my father for things that he did to me as a child, and growing up as a kid. So I have forgiven him for that because I know that he couldn't help himself being a parent and just, being in the moment of whatever was happening. So I actually haven't physically said those words to him, but I said it to myself, and it's on my heart that I forgive him for all those things. And it made me be able to have a little bit of a better relationship because I was able to let go of those things that I resented him for in the past.
I know for myself, I've actually had to forgive myself because there's a lot of things that I felt really guilty about. I wasn't really living my best life when I was younger. And so there's a lot of things that I did that I wasn't proud of. And a lot of decisions that I made that set me on the path to maybe a little bit of a destructive lifestyle. Yeah. So those are some things that I had to live with for a really long time and forgive myself for, because I needed to do that in order to grow and to move on and to kind of like put that part of my life behind me. So first and foremost, I needed to forgive myself, and I did.
Rob has done the same thing with his mother. He physically told her that he forgives her for anything that has happened in the past. And she actually stopped and said, "Thank you. I needed that." So sometimes you can be resentful and have hatred towards things that have happened to you in the past, but it's the past. You got to let it go. You can't live your life with that burden on your heart. And just speaking about our last episode of mom guilt, that's another thing that, like you said, you had to forgive yourself. I need to work on that also, because I have a lot of mom guilt when it comes to the things that I do and say to the kids. And I often have to think about just giving myself a little bit of leeway when it comes to that, and not putting so much pressure on myself, and forgiving myself for the things that I've said and done that I acted maybe out of rage or out of just stress. But, in the long run, I'm not going to, hate myself over it or resent myself for it. I just have to let it go.
Right. And that story that you just gave about Rob forgiving his mom and actually telling her and her saying thank you, that's a perfect example of forgiving somebody and it causing a reconciliation in their relationship.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there were some tension and things like that in the past. Rob tells me all the time too that I actually have to physically say that I forgive my father to his face. But I mean, like, I've forgiven him in my mind, but I don't know that I can actually say that to him.
That's awesome. Well, forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean that you need to go and tell them specifically. I mean, if that's what you feel, you need to heal your relationship and you want to heal that relationship, that's fine. But you don't have to physically tell the person that you forgive them in order to heal from forgiving someone.
I think it's much easier to forgive than it is to hold that grudge and to be resentful and hate and have some hatred, because it's only going to eat at you. And, you see often, you think you see other people, whether it's family, friends, co-workers, where they can't forget and they can't forgive. And it ruins the relationships and they can't ever get over it. And people, they don't get to say, "I'm sorry," and they don't get to forgive that person before they pass away or something like that, to mend that relationship.
It's a good thing you brought that up, because I was going to say that there's a lot of myths surrounding forgiveness and what it really means to forgive someone. A lot of people think or hear the phrase forgive and forget, but you don't necessarily have to forget about what happened to you in order to forgive the person, because if you forget what they did, then you can't learn from it, So you learn from the things that happened to you in the past. So you don't want to forget it, because it'll teach you lessons. It'll teach you who you can trust and who you can't trust. And it helps you grow from your past experiences and learn for the future. So
I say all the time, forgive, but don't forget. Like, I'm not, I know what you did, and I'm going to what you did. So I forgive you. But if you do it again, I don't know if I'm going to be that forgiving.
Say somebody stole from you, right? you're not gonna leave your wallet around that person anymore because you know, like, hey, they stole money from my wallet before. So that's how you're learning. Like, you forgave that person for stealing from you, but now you learned and now you do better. Now you don't give the person the opportunity to steal from you again. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not going to. And if they do, you have to keep on continue forgiving them. There's no limit on how many times you should forgive someone, because like I said, the forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. Sorry. Also, forgiveness doesn't mean that you're not going to feel pain anymore. So when you're hurt by somebody, it really stings emotionally, and you don't want to become emotionally void just because you chose to forgive someone. You're simply saying that you're not going to allow those emotions to overtake your life anymore. And you're going to let go of the anger against that person and choose to heal instead.
I feel like people just need to forgive in order to be able to heal.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you have all these feelings of animosity towards that person, but yet that person is still living their best life, not caring about what you're feeling, you know, but but you are the one that's like
in turmoil,
being affected by it, not them. So also, forgiveness doesn't mean that you don't seek justice. So if you were wronged by somebody in a legal sense, then you can pursue them legally. Just because you forgive them doesn't mean you shouldn't sue them or, you know, whatever, seek justice. Like if they harmed you in some way, the press charges. So seeking vengeance for someone's wrongs is okay, especially if the offender hurt you physically in some manner or financially. It's okay to seek legal justice, although you may have forgiven this person. However, be careful not to seek revenge, and don't take justice into your own hands. Leave it up to the courts of law or the laws of God.
I agree with that, because like I see all the time on these murder shows or like these high profile cases that have a lot of news coverage where like maybe there was a murder or something, and the victim's family will go and testify and say, I forgive you for what you did, but I will never forget that you took my daughter away from me, or you took my son away from me. So whatever sentence you get, you deserve it. But I do forgive you.
So forgiveness also doesn't mean that you leave a door open for your offender to hurt you again. When you choose to forgive someone, you also put up boundaries around that relationship. So like I said before, for example, if someone stole from you, then don't invite them back into your house again. If someone betrayed you, don't entrust them with your secrets anymore. You know, don't become a doormat and just allow them to continue hurting you. There's no limits on how many times you can forgive somebody, but you also don't want to put yourself in the position where you're just going to keep getting hurt and hurt and hurt by the same person over and over again.
Yeah. President Bush actually has a famous saying that I love that he said all the time. And it goes, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
And then also, forgiveness is rarely a one-time event. More often than not, you may find yourself forgiving someone more than once, or forgiving more than one person over and over. Feelings may come flooding back when you see the person who offended you, and you need to constantly remind yourself that you've already forgiven this person. Or they may offend you again, but in a different way. And then you need to forgive them again for something else. In a biblical sense, Paul was offended and asked God, how many times must I forgive this person? 7 times. And the Lord said, I didn't say 7 times. I tell you to forgive someone 77 times. So to me, what that means is you just keep on forgiving until you just keep on forgiving for as many times as it takes.
That reminds me of like those intervention shows where, you know, the mother or the father, the families are enabling their children with drugs and, you know, giving them money, things like that. And they constantly justifying it in their head. Well, I forgive them for this, I forgive them for that, but yet they are enabling them in that drug use, you know?
Yeah.
So
you don't want to be an enabler.
Yeah, I feel like you said, you can forgive somebody as much as you want, but there needs to come a time and point where maybe that forgiveness isn't going to work anymore because they just take you for granted, and you need to have more drastic measures and cut them out, maybe.
Well, that's where you put your boundaries up. If they continue to hurt you over and over, then that's where your boundaries go up. And I actually have a good example of that with my brother-in-law. He is a recovering heroin addict. And when he first started getting clean, he would, when he felt like using, because he lives in New York. So whenever he felt like using, he would like hit me up and just be like, hey, can I come to your house? Because I live all the way in Pennsylvania. He doesn't know anybody out here. So there
Yeah.
would be absolutely no way for him to get any sort of drug out here, you know? So I would go and pick him up and bring him to my house. So that way he can get away from the scene, get away from the temptation, doesn't know anybody, you know, so he's not tempted to use.
Right.
And it turns out that when he got here, he had bought like a whole bottle of sleeping pills and I had no idea. And he took them all at once. And he was a wreck at my house. And I had no idea what happened. But obviously, you know, that's a relapse because he used it to get high.
Yeah.
And I really felt betrayed by him because, you know, I went out there, I picked him up and everything. So it's something I had to forgive him for that because I really felt betrayed. I felt hurt. I felt like all these emotions. And, you know, I told him, I actually physically told him, like, I forgive you for this. But now, like, that's the last time. I'm not doing that for you anymore. You know, like
Yeah.
you're going to come here, you're going to be clean, or you're not welcome here. So those are the boundaries that I set up for him. But I think that him hearing me say that I forgive you was also beneficial to him in that sense because I wanted him to know my feelings. So that way, I think that it was beneficial to his sobriety.
Yeah, and also, you know, you may have forgiven him, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be welcome back in your house, or you know, he can expect to do anything like that ever again around you.
I think that when you forgive, it's very empowering to you and healing, which is why I picked this as our first topic for empowerment because you first need to start with healing yourself.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's like anything in life, right? If you don't love yourself, then how can you fully love anyone else? So if you can't forgive yourself for the mistakes that you've made in the past or just bad things that you've done. I know for myself, I didn't grow up Christian, I grew up Catholic, but I don't really associate with the Catholic Church anymore. I'm more on the Christian side, but I have repented for things that I've done in the past, and I've done a lot of messed up things. And I now try to live my life very honest, so that way I don't have to forgive anybody or nobody has to forgive me. I found money on the floor the other day at the supermarket. Like an employee was like, "Is that yours?" And I looked down and there was money on the floor. I could have easily said, "Yeah, it was mine." But I knew in my conscience that I wouldn't forgive myself if I did that. So I was like, "No,
Yeah.
it's not mine. So just take it and go bring it up to the office or whatever." But that's how I tend to live my life now. I'm more honest about everything that I do because I am more.
Well, exactly. I made it clear the boundaries, like from now on, you come here, you're not allowed to do this, this, and this. And if I catch you, like again, like you're not allowed over here at all. So I think that he got the message. You know, things have been well since then. So
God-fearing, and I try to live my life in that sense, and I know that that's wrong.
if God can forgive us for our absolute worst offenses, then it's our obligation to forgive others for the most minor offenses even.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like the kids Bible verse for the week is John 3:16, which has got to be like the most famous Bible verse in the Bible.
For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son.
Exactly. So for God to give up and sacrifice his only son so we could have eternal life, then I want to live by what he says. And he's a very forgiving person. Like, he's never going to not forgive you for what you did, but you need to realize what you did or what somebody did to you, and, learn from those mistakes.
To put a picture to words, I would say that holding a grudge is like having a balloon over your head with a 50-pound weight attached to the end of the string. And then you have that string tied around your waist.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you forgive someone, the string will break, the weight falls to the ground, and then the balloon like floats away and is released.
That's a good analogy, because, often a lot of people, like, let's say family, for instance, a lot of family problems that may go on are all because you cannot forgive that person, and it just takes a toll on your body. You can become sick, physically ill from it, you become depressed.
It's literally like carrying around a weight.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you let yourself go and let yourself forgive, you will feel freer.
That's what I have written down. It's freeing. It's a freeing feeling when you release that weight, and those balloons are no longer hanging over your head, like darkening your sky. You know what I mean? They're blocking the sunlight from coming through. That's how I pictured it in my mind. Like a whole bunch of balloons just over your head for every person or everything that you're holding a grudge against.
I just feel like if you want to live your life the happiest and feel fulfilled and at your full potential, then you need to let go of those things and forgive. It can really eat at you and just bring down your entire being. And life is so short for you to hold a grudge. It's not necessary. I mean, maybe there are some things that maybe you're not just gonna forgive right away. It needs to take time. And we're not saying like you need to forgive immediately. That's not reality. But
right.
To hold a grudge or, whatever the issue is, you got to just let it go.
That's actually perfect that you brought that up, because there are steps that, should be taken in order to learn how to forgive somebody. If that's something that you struggle with, is forgiving somebody. There are certain things that you can learn how to forgive. So I just want to say that a lot of times when you're holding a grudge, you're holding resentment towards that person. Okay. And the definition of resentment is bitter indignation at having been treated unfairly. So it's the harboring of ill will or anger against someone who you feel has wronged you or hurt you. So I think that's a perfect definition for somebody that you would want to forgive. So if you feel those feelings towards somebody, then you might want to consider forgiving that person, not for them, but for you to be free. I had already picked this topic, not knowing that my devotional this morning was all about forgiveness. And it's like a journal prompt devotional. So it was really cool to see that that's what it was about. But it asks you questions and then it prompts you to like answer them. So one of the questions today was to describe what it feels like to hold a grudge, and then what it feels like when you've forgiven somebody and let go of the grudge. So in order to learn how to forgive, you must first learn the fundamentals of forgiveness. So the first fundamental is to cultivate compassion. So forgiveness is an empowering act of love and an unselfish, generous expression of your spirit. So you start by forgiving yourself, and then you forgive others through compassion. So compassion nourishes your soul and fills your heart with gratitude. So you need to have compassion in order to forgive. And then you want to let go. So you want to work on letting go of your past and releasing your pain and sorrow to create peace in your life. Creating peace removes you from conflict and allows you to focus on the pursuit of true happiness. And you want to choose. So forgiving someone is a clear and conscious choice that you have to make that demonstrates your decision to not allow the negative emotions that surround the offense to take control of your life, and may even bring about reconciliation.
You may forgive somebody and they may not take that well, and they may not want to reconcile, but you know in your heart that you forgave them. So maybe eventually when they do come around, you know, you have already given them a chance.
So sometimes when you forgive someone, someone is actually giving you an apology. I think those are great examples of reconciliation, because let's say like you were wronged by a friend of yours and you know they realize they're wrong and they apologize to you. You can physically say like, I forgive you, and you can reconcile the relationship after that. So I think that when somebody realizes that they've done wrong and apologizes, then that's a good example to reconcile. But you don't need an apology to forgive someone.
Yeah, I agree with that. You can forgive them in your own heart and, you know, knowing that you got over it, but you may not necessarily have told them with your own words. But I know that I have lost some friendships over stupid stuff, really stupid stuff that I couldn't get over or they couldn't get over. And life went on and we just never mended that relationship and just not friends ever again.
Yeah, I have a lot of those examples as well. You know, I always like to think of it like this. Like there are some people that are meant to be in your life forever, and then there's some that are only meant to be in your life for a season. So maybe those are just the people who are meant to be in our life for a certain amount of time, and now, you know, we need to move on and grow.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely. So the next step you want to do is that you may never get an apology. Accept that that relationship will never be the same again. And accept the fact that this person hurt you. When you accept these things, it makes forgiveness a little easier. It helps you to realize that the other person's actions have nothing to do with your reason for forgiveness.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like as a part of your own internal healing, you may need to just forgive and, like I said, not forget. And you know, yeah, it'll be great if it's you know, double-sided, the forgiveness, and you can mend whatever relationship was broken, but sometimes it doesn't work that way, and sometimes that person's never gonna get over it and they're never gonna forgive you, but you know in your heart that you did, and you can move on and don't let that bother you anymore.
There's even sometimes people don't even realize that they did wrong to you or won't admit that they did wrong to you.
Yeah.
And in that sense, you're never going to get an apology from that person ever. So you're just going to have to either let it go and forgive them, or, you know, let it fester. And that doesn't help you.
I have that problem sometimes, like mainly with Rob, you know, like really stepping up and like apologizing when I did something wrong or recognizing that it was my fault. So I'm working on that.
I think it's hard in relationships to admit that you're wrong, because, you know, you don't want like that other person to be like, ha, I told you, or I was right, you know? So it's really, especially your husband, you don't want him to admit that you were wrong and he was right.
Yeah, well, a lot of the times I say, well, okay, you may have been right, but I wanted to figure this out on my own. Whether I was wrong or not, like I needed to have my own opinion, my own thoughts, you know.
Yeah, that's a learning process in everyone's relationship, though.
All relationships are learning process every damn day.
Oh yeah, definitely. It takes work every day, no matter how long you've been married.
Yeah, for real.
So another thing you want to do when you're forgiving someone is love. So forgiveness is an act of love. You may be demonstrating love to the person who asked your forgiveness and allowing them a second chance or a clean slate, or you may be demonstrating love to yourself. So also you need to be willing. So you need to be willing to release your emotions of fear, anger, or resentment towards the person you're forgiving. And being willing to forgive someone lifts the burden of fear, guilt, hurt, shame, bitterness, and tears down the walls of pride and ego. So it makes you more humble.
Yeah, I feel like your pride and your ego is huge. In the Bible, they say that you're not supposed to be prideful. You're not supposed to have pride.
Right. You need to be humble, and pride is something that keeps people away from forgiving others and from loving and from a whole lot of things.
Yeah, well, you
But
can say like, I'm not going to forgive them. I'm not going to say I'm sorry. I didn't do anything wrong. Or you could truly believe that or whatever. And that's your pride,
yeah,
ego getting in the way.
yep. So your pride and your ego can be a very dangerous thing. You should humble yourselves, and then you want to heal. So forgiveness heals old wounds and traumas and soothes the pain of the past. It gives you peace of mind knowing that you have consciously decided to let go and not let the negative emotions control you anymore.
Yeah, I struggle with passing judgment part because I've been trying not to have these judgmental thoughts in my head when I look at people.
Yeah, being judgmental, it's hard because sometimes you struggle with that alone, because it's like you think about it internally. So like no one can say like, hey, stop doing that, Jackie, because nobody heard you think that thought about that person. So that's something that like falls on you. You have to be accountable to yourself for that.
Yeah, definitely.
I try my best not to be judgmental. There are times where everybody passes judgment at one time or another. Like
it's just human.
There's this cashier example at the supermarket I shop at, and I always try to avoid her because I always like pass judgment on her and say like she's a weirdo. Because she meows. She acts like a cat and she meows at us and makes like cat noises, right? So like, although I shouldn't be judging her for that, I judge her for acting like a cat when she's a grown woman. So I just avoid her. So the best thing to do instead of passing judgment is avoiding those people.
That's just blowing my mind right now. I've never come across that in anybody that's working like a job. I mean, I guess she has still problems that she needs to deal with.
She's like meowing behind her mask, and then she's like, by the way, that's me meowing. I sound like a cat. And I'm like, oh, okay. I thought there was a cat under your register. Like,
what? Wait, she even tells you that she's meowing?
Yeah. That's why I'm like, I went to her line twice, and after that I was like, even if she has no line, I'll wait online on someone else's.
I mean, I know there's like equal opportunity employment, so I guess you can't discriminate, but like you can't make it up.
Yeah, seriously. So instead of judging her from now on, I'm just gonna avoid her.
For real. I do that too. I've mentioned before that I do Instacart while the kids are in school, and there are just some cashiers that I'm like, I can't even deal with you. So I just avoid them because like there's this one lady at ShopRite, and she's like an older woman, like 60s maybe. And she's just like a stickler, like by the books type of lady. Like I can't put in my phone number and use a coupon or whatever if it's Instacart. And I'm just like, you know what? Like I can't even deal with you. I'm just gonna go on a different line. So this way I'm just not annoyed by you, and I'm not gonna in my head curse you out.
Right. You're not gonna have to forgive yourself for something that you said in your head later.
Exactly. I'll just not go to your line to save myself any of that.
Well, I had to forgive somebody, a complete stranger that I'm never probably ever going to see again today, because I was driving and I was at a red light and I was the first one in line. And as soon as the light changed green, I put my foot on the gas to go. And I always have this habit ever since, I don't know where I picked it up from. Maybe my parents taught me or something, but I always look both ways, even when the light's green, if I'm first in line, just to make sure that nobody's coming. And good thing I did, because somebody passed a red light and she didn't just roll through it. She flew through the red light. She didn't even realize the light was red, because when she's seen me pulling out, she's beeping my horn, and I can see her in her mirror, like cursing me out. Like I was the one in the wrong when I had the green light. So if I hadn't looked, I would have gotten hit. So I was really mad, at first. I was like fuming, like, oh my God, this lady beeped at me and she was the one in the wrong and she almost hit me. And so I had to kind of like let that go and kind of just like, all right, God, I forgive her, everything's all good. Nobody got hurt.
Yeah. See, I had like a weak moment the other day.
And that happened today.
And I was driving and I was in the right-hand lane and the person in front of me was turning into like a building or whatever. And they stopped and the guy behind me just all freaked out, honking the horn, hands out the window. And I did not react the way I should have reacted. And I stuck my finger out the window, gave him the finger. And then when he drove by, I gave him the finger again because it pissed me off. Like, I'm not doing anything wrong. This person in front of me is stopping. Like, do you want me to get into a car accident? Why are you honking at me? But so I reacted poorly in the situation.
I mean, especially when you're on the road, it's very easy to become irate with people because sometimes you're like, who the hell gave this person a freaking driver's license?
Yeah, it's really scary out here too because it's so populated in New York that everybody is just not paying attention. They're all on their cell phones and you could see that they're on their cell phone.
So another thing when you're forgiving someone, you want to be liberated. So forgiveness is very freeing. It not only frees you from the pain of your past, but allows you to love fully and wholly again. It allows your walls to come down a little and let positive emotions in again. It also allows for a deeper spiritual awareness. And the last point is be peaceful. So forgiving others and yourself helps you to be more at peace with your emotions. It helps you be more present in the moment, and it allows you not to be overrun by negative emotions, but to learn how to let things go. So a question you might have is like, what happens to the person that you're forgiving? Like, what happens to the offender when you forgive them? Well, if you hold a grudge against them, it doesn't change them in any way, shape, or form, or cause them to repent or cause them to apologize or anything. But it does change you. It causes you to become bitter and angry if you don't forgive someone. And it does nothing to the offender when you're angry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just going to take an emotional toll on you. And the offender just goes on with life.
Exactly. So why do you have to forgive someone when you get hurt? Because when you don't forgive, your negative emotions may carry over into other relationships, which leaves less room for positive emotions. We may even become aggressors ourselves, which leaves us open to sin and temptation, which in turn becomes a vicious cycle. Yeah. So forgiveness is never about the aggressor. It's always about ourselves. We can't change the past. If we become aggressors because of our hurt and pain, then it just justifies the offender even more, allowing them to have like a triple, quadruple win because we're getting hurt by them from the initial harm. Then we harm ourselves by holding a grudge. Then we feel guilty and shameful on top of it. So it justifies the actions of the wrongdoer even more. So forgiveness protects us from getting hurt and justifying the wrongs of others.
I feel that forgiveness is very powerful. It's more powerful than hatred.
Oh, also, like, there's a lot of people who choose not to forgive. And why do they do that? Because forgiveness is hard. At times you need to relive what happened, and often it's just easier to blame someone else. And sometimes people are just waiting for the wrongdoer to ask for forgiveness or to apologize, which that time may never come. And again, it's a pride thing. They may be too proud, or their ego may be blocking them from just saying, like, I forgive you. Let's put this behind us. But forgiveness, like we said before, it improves your health. You stress less. You have more energy. You're of a sounder mind. So to me, it's a no-brainer. Like, forgiveness is something that should just be like a way of life for us. And there's a whole multitude of people who you could forgive, like a spouse, a child, maybe if you have like adult children who have wronged you, a parent, a friend, some other family member, yourself, maybe someone who's already passed away, or even a complete stranger. Like I gave that example before about the lady that, almost hit me. Or it can even be like an attacker, a rapist, like somebody who has wronged you, but maybe you're never going to see again.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like we keep saying, I just feel that forgiveness is only going to make your heart heal, your mind heal, than keeping that hatred and keeping that negativity in your life. Yeah, it may not happen overnight. It may not happen in a year, 2 years, 3 years. It may happen in 20 years, but at least it does happen and you're able to move on and get over it eventually.
Exactly. So just how like we need to learn forgiveness, we are also obligated to teach our children how to forgive. So I just want to go over a couple points quickly on how we can teach our kids forgiveness. And of course, the best way is always through example. Leading by example is how our children learn things the best. So you want to be forgiving of them and of others, and they can watch and learn from you. But also there are other instances that you can use to teach your kids. So like, for example, if they have siblings, sibling arguments are always a great way to teach forgiveness, because all siblings bicker, all siblings fight and argue. So those are perfect times where you can use those examples to teach them how to reconcile with each other, teach them how to apologize to each other, and teach them to say, like, I forgive you. And you want to be consistent every time, no matter how small the argument is. You always want to keep reminding them, like, hey, that wasn't nice, apologize to your brother, and then have them say, I forgive you.
I agree with that. That's something that I've been struggling with right now with the kids, because they're constantly arguing, constantly fighting, attitudes left and right. And like I tell Nate all the time, why are you fighting with each other? Well, Lacey's bothering me. She's annoying. I said, yeah, she is annoying, but you need to not fight over it. You know that she's annoying. You know that, she's going to do things. She's your sister. You guys need to get along. You need to love each other. You're like, that's the only sister you have, and that's the only brother she has. So you may not think that that's right now, and you may resent me or whatever for saying that, but it's the truth. And even like the way the kids speak to me sometimes, like with an attitude and a nastiness, and I say, whoa, I'm your mother. Who are you talking to right now? So you need to back it up, slow your roll, and rethink about what you just said.
Yes, there have been many times. I'm going through the same thing. It must be a phase right now with these preteens, I guess. But she gives me attitude sometimes, and she will like talk to me like yelling at me and like being stern with me, and I'm like, excuse me, who are you talking to like that? I'm your mother. You talk to me with respect, and you don't speak to me that way, and I need an apology from you. And she really has a hard time apologizing, but she doesn't have a hard time forgiving. So I'm glad about that, but she does have a hard time apologizing. So I told her, like, she's going to have to learn that, because she's going to hurt somebody one day, and they're not going to want to, reconcile with her because she's not being apologetic.
Yeah, I think that kids are very forgiving, but they may not be accepting to apologizing.
Well, you want to teach them unconditional forgiveness. So teach them to forgive regardless of what the other person's response is, like I was just talking about. Even if they don't want to apologize, you still forgive them. And what matters is that your child has feelings that need to be released. So unconditionally forgive them, even when it's not reciprocated. So if one is willing to forgive the other and the other one isn't willing to apologize, you still forgive them.
Yeah, and I wish I had learned this earlier on in life. I probably would have saved myself a lot of aggravation and a lot of headaches and a lot of mental turmoil and physical turmoil,
It's like everything is great on paper, but then
Yeah.
when you need to apply it to your life, it's like not always so cut and dry because your kids fight with you and they argue on you on things, and it's frustrating. So even like knowing all this stuff, it's never too late to start. Your kids are still little. Start from now on, start a new tradition.
Yeah, well, we had an episode on what you would say to your younger self, knowing what you know now. So obviously we can't go back in the past and change our life and everything, but we can relay that to our children so they don't follow in our footsteps, and we teach them the right and the wrong.
Our children are our future. So what we didn't like about ourselves when we felt we needed to change, we need to instill that in our kids. Yeah. So we need to remind them constantly that it's not about being right. When you forgive someone, it's never about being right, making the relationship right. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it doesn't matter who was wrong, who was right, but as long as you're brother and sister, so just you have to correct this relationship, and that's how you do it, by forgiving.
But I also feel like you shouldn't just forgive because that's what you feel like you have to do. You should really mean it.
Well, when they're little, I think that more of the action of forgiving is important because they might not understand the full meaning of it just yet, but they will as they get older and they understand emotions better and they understand, like, they introspect more on themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They're
going to be more willing to when they're older because they're going to be like, well, this is what I've been brought up learning my whole life. So this is what I should do now. And so you don't want to place stipulations on forgiveness. So, like, for example, if you make my bed for a whole week, then I'll forgive you for whatever you did. You don't ever want to do anything like that. Yeah, you don't ever want to do anything like that. That's extortion.
Yeah, exactly.
It's more about, so forgiveness is given without any expectations or conditions or anything. You're just doing it out of the goodness of your heart. Also, you want to give it time. We can't make our children forgive anyone. If we pressure them to say something when they don't mean it, then nothing really gets solved. So you want to explain the importance and the benefits of forgiving. However, the actual act must come from the heart and not our demands, like you just said before.
Definitely. You can't just expect somebody to.
Yes. And like I said before, my daughter struggles with that. So she will be like, she sometimes will say sorry just because I told her to, like, you should apologize. And she'll be like, sorry. And like really not mean it at all, Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not the way you apologize. So when you're ready to really mean it and apologize from your heart, then you can say it again. And she'll go and she'll take a few minutes and then she'll come back and she'll be calmer and apologize, like, from the goodness of her heart. So I'm glad that we're learning that.
Well, you can tell when somebody has a fake apology and when it's genuine.
Absolutely. Right. So you always want it to be sincere.
Yeah.
And you want to teach your kids perspective. So you want them to not only just see their side of whatever happened, you want to try to get them to see the other person's point of view as well. So maybe they can realize on their own what they did was wrong. So you need to be able to teach your kids that there's always two sides to every story. There's their side and then there's the other side.
Yeah.
And it's much easier to forgive when you know the whole story and not just the half of it. So you're not just saying, like, well, he hit me. Well, he's saying that you hit him first. So, that's the argument we get all the time. He hit me. Oh, yeah. She hit me first.
Exactly. It's like, I don't care who hit who. You shouldn't be touching each other, and keep your hands to yourself and go and apologize. I don't care who did it.
You shouldn't hit her first and you shouldn't hit him back. So there you go. You're both in the wrong. So apologize. So you don't want to be held back either. So when you gain, what do you gain by holding a grudge? Like we talked about before, feelings of resentment keep us from moving forward. So you want to teach your kids that also that being bitter and being resentful will just eat away at them inside in the long run. And when you forgive somebody, you want to tell them, like, it'll release those feelings and give you a clean slate for new experiences and new emotions, happy emotions, better emotions.
Right.
And to go hand in hand with that, the inside eventually comes pouring out.
Forgive you because you want to be forgiven.
You're filled with bitterness and you are holding a grudge. Eventually, you can't hold that in forever. And eventually it's going to just explode out of you and it's going to make a big, messy, scene. So you want to fill your heart and mind with peace and forgiveness. So that way, instead of pouring all that garbage out of you, you can pour into others and pour happiness into others and good emotions and positive things.
Positivity is more beneficial to your health than negativity. There are a lot of people that live very negative thoughts, negative life, and they can die from it, from depression, from whatever. It can lead to drug problems, alcoholism,
Or it could just lead to a very lonely life as well, because nobody wants to be around a bitter person or a resentful person. You want to teach them to serve. So you want to volunteer at a homeless shelter, go on a mission trip where they can learn to serve others. Giving forgiveness takes humility. So you build a spirit of humility by being mindful of others' needs. So going to the soup kitchen, or, even like cleaning out their toys and donating toys to maybe kids that are less fortunate. It teaches them to be humble. It teaches humbleness.
Yeah, we do that here. We've volunteered at our church for Thanksgiving. They throw a big Thanksgiving dinner for anybody that may not have a place to go or is homeless, or and we brought the kids just so they can understand that you have a nice life and I give you everything that you want, but people are unfortunate and they may not have asked to have been brought up in a situation that they're in, or asked to be homeless or anything like that. But you don't treat those people differently just because they don't have what you have. So you go and you help out and you serve them food, and you make them feel like they're at a restaurant, or just make them feel like they're appreciated.
And also you want to teach your kids the golden rule too. So you want them to treat others how you would wish yourself to be treated. So you want them to learn the importance that treating people right, makes a big difference, because how would they like it if somebody treated them the way that they just treated that person? Make them feel empathy. It teaches them empathy too. Well, I hope you guys learned a little something about forgiveness today. I know I sure did. Forgiveness can cause you to live longer, to have less stress, to have better relationships, and just to be an overall happier person. So you don't want to hold a grudge. You just want to forgive and let go. And doesn't mean you have to forget. You just letting go of those negative emotions.
Trust your gut instinct and your intuition and do what you feel is right. And, like we said, it may not necessarily be an overnight thing. Could take years to forgive, but eventually, hopefully, you will learn something from this episode, and maybe it has helped some of you out there to forgive. And if you have, maybe you can leave us a little comments letting us know that we helped you in some sort of way, or I would love to hear any of your stories that you have on forgiveness. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at candid.motherhood, or on Facebook, and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can continue to listen to our podcasts. Thank you so much for listening to Candid Motherhood Podcast.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please subscribe, share, and rate our podcast.
If you have any ideas for future episodes or want to learn more about us, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram at candid.motherhood, and on Twitter at @cmotherhood.
We appreciate your love and support. Until next time, thank you, Candid Mamas.